Hello everyone. Welcome to another exciting Tuesday night Eventide stream. How is everyone doing here this fine Tuesday night? Today, I figured we'd gather up and chat a bit about some of the playtest feedback that I've been getting and some of the process that's been going on. We haven't done one of these in a little bit, primarily because over the holiday break we didn't have a lot of playtesting going on. And yeah, that has kind of slowed down, but we are now back in the thick of things. And the adventures are happening again, so that's always good. Before we really dig into it, sorry about missing last week. I'm sure most of you are well aware of the fact that I launched a Kickstarter for the print edition of Hope Finder. That kind of was a attack of opportunity on my part. Trying to get that up and running while Last of Us is still going on HBO, and while Zine Quest is happening on Kickstarter. So for me, that was a good opportunity to get that out there, and it's something I knew I was going to do in the early part of this year. It just happened sooner than I would have thought. Combining that with needing to prepare things for Third Party Con that was last weekend, and my past couple of weeks have really been swamped. I've been really busy. Glad now to be kind of back at it now that the Kickstarter is kind of off and doing its thing. I have turned most of my attention back to Eventide, and the playtest sessions have been going along rather nicely here. Both groups have had a couple of sessions here in the start of the new year, and as a result, they're both kind of in the process of wrapping up part 2 of Wolfren's Fate. Now, I am really interested to see how this all kind of comes together here at the end. The storylines are kind of converging. Both groups are kind of doing the same thing at the same time right now, which has been really fun because I'm able to kind of prep once and play both sessions. That was actually really kind of a challenge. I think one of the things that I learned about this was playtesting the city part, the urban part of this adventure, really was kind of chaotic because the groups could go in different directions week to week, and as a result I kind of had to prep the entire middle of the adventure simultaneously because I didn't know where they were going to go. And even if I asked them, the other group might say something different. So that's been kind of slow. But I will say that now that we're kind of into the meat of this final bit, things are coming along quite well. Now, if you recall, at the end of part 2, of Wolfren's Fate, the adventurers are participating in the Eventide Festival, a annual kind of celebration to denote Eventide, and it has a bunch of different purposes and functions. And on the second night of it, their enemies, the Gaunts, attack Alapar Clifton, and their contact in this secretive organization called the Dawnbringers, who are investigating whatever Eventide actually is. So the adventure then, from that point, turns from being kind of sorry, I'm real tired here today. From kind of an open-ended exploration to being kind of a dungeon crawl in a sewer that leads to the Gaunt's lair. Now, some of that I started playtesting toward the end of last year, but much of it is now happening now. So I kind of want to walk through everything that's been going on and talk about how this last bit actually is going to need some extra tuning, because I think it might be too hard. In both groups, I've nearly had someone die. I mean, come real close. Like, if these two rolls go the wrong way, you die. So, let's start by taking a peek here at this map. So this is the main sewer map. And it's kind of, I'm not sure if I've shown this whole thing to everybody yet, but this is the whole sewer map. And the party arrives kind of, let's see, they arrive kind of up there Um, that is kind of where they arrive, and ultimately they have to make their way all the way over here. So, there is kind of some dividing points in here. There's a couple fights. You can see those because you're viewing it from GM view, so you can kind of see the fights. There's that first fight with flies and maggots, then there's a fight with frogs, there's a spider over on the other side, and then there's an Adiug roaming around. That's really too powerful for the PCs to fight, but they can negotiate with it or avoid it. So that's kind of a threat that they can negotiate or avoid their way around. They can fight it if they want, but it is a very difficult opponent, and I don't think most groups should do it. Now, that's not what's causing me the challenges. That's not what's causing my near TPKs. That is what is happening in the second map, which is being very dangerous as well. So, yeah, both groups have been kind of exploring this, and when you get down into the sewers, right, you have to go and you have to deal with the flies and the maggots, and then you quickly realize that there's a lot of different ways you can go, and you're trying to follow this trail of ink blots, and all of this kind of went according to plan. There was nothing really all that complicated about it. There's some frogs you got to fight, and then up in this area, there's kind of a puzzle, or not a puzzle, a skill challenge thing you have to do to get to move this plank into place, right? So the plank kind of got moved over there, and you can't cross without it because that area is up higher than the rest of the dungeon. It's like 15 feet above the level of the sewer, and you can't climb the walls. So there's a bunch of different ways you can do it. You can kind of, scale the walls and walk along the ledge. You can try and jump it. There's a bunch of different things you could do. But both groups kind of found a way to get that plank and bring that over. So, yeah. Ultimately, both groups were able to get across there. Then you get into this other part, and this is where my own kind of cleverness started getting ahead of me. So over here, over in this part of the dungeon, there's the spider. That's not really that much of a threat. It's mostly a road bump, speed bump kind of fight. But there are all these grates, and these grates are actually 8 levers. And in each lever, there is some bit of instruction, and you can set the levers to one of a handful of different combinations, and each lever controls a certain amount of flow. So when you get to the lower right-hand corner, there's a puzzle, and the puzzle is that the overflow is currently being used, and the overflow dumps raw sewage from the ceiling right here into this pit. And it's an overflow because the sluiceways are imbalanced. And if the sluiceways are balanced, the overflow wouldn't be used, and then you could go down where the overflow is, because that's where the trail leads to, into the overflow. But you can't go down there because it's currently filled with sewage pouring from the ceiling, and you have no idea what's even going on down there. So you have to solve this puzzle where you have to balance the sluiceways. And basically, there's a bit that says, there's a note from one of the workers to the other that says, remember, you have to balance the sluiceways. A can't be more than, can't be more than half of B, and B can't be more than half of C. And then if you go around to all these valves, they say, oh, this valve can be set to A or B and has a flow value of 4, right? And so basically, there's all these different combinations, right? Most of them can be set to A, B, or C. Some can only be set to A or B. Some actually allow you to split the value across multiple sluiceways. And basically, you're trying to get to the mathematical formula that allows you to have them all balanced out. Now, both groups tackled this puzzle. And I gotta say, both groups relied on one player to solve the puzzle. The other players kind of helped gather the information and sneak around, because you got this Adiug sleeping, so you also have to sneak around and avoid the waking up the Adiug. And that is, of course, compounded by the fact that there are shrieker mushrooms that you don't want to get too close to. And I may need to move those around a bit, because right now they're a little too close to some of the areas, and it's kind of hard to not set them off. But, yeah. So you don't want to wake up the Adiug, which is over here sleeping. And so you got to kind of sneak around and get to all these different grates and look at the values, because most players didn't bother recording anything or even noting it until they made it to the end and then realized they had to double back. Both groups did this. Both groups realized they had to double back to solve the puzzle. So in both groups, I really only had one player solving the puzzle, though. So, I mean, I think I've included more than enough puzzles in this particular dungeon, in this particular adventure. And for the final, I may actually look for a way to kind of ease up on them just a hair. Because frankly, they're not everyone's cup of tea. And I should make sure that the adventures have bits in them that are like, yeah, if you don't want to do the puzzle, here's what you do instead. Right, you know, have the characters make some skill checks, and then they could just give them the answer. I can be done with it. It's fine. You don't have to make everyone do the puzzle. So in this case, both groups did it. One group managed to avoid the Adiug entirely and just not really mess with it. The one time they woke it up, they hid from it, which is what you're supposed to do, because it doesn't have very good eyesight. It's been hurt. Its pad with its eyes on it has taken like an axe wound, and only one of its eyes really opens, and it's not that good. So it's easy to kind of hide from because it doesn't have a very good perception. The other group actually negotiated with it. So one thing that's of note here in the beginning, there's this pile of rotten debris that's kind of built up in the junction here, and it's mentioned specifically in there that there is a dead goat. And my second group actually went and grabbed the dead goat and traded it to the Adiug for safe passage. They gave him the dead goat. So he ate the dead goat. It was delicious. Nice and sewer ripened, just how he likes it. So, yeah. For those of you who may have seen my Twitter comment a few weeks back about, no, you don't get any XP for the monster I have to remove due to the OGL, it was talking about that Adiug. So that was fun, and you know, everybody had a good laugh, and you know, so both groups kind of made it to the sewers, and that was kind of their first session of the year, was finishing off the sewer bit. Both of them had kind of made it to the bridge part. And then they spent the next session kind of solving the puzzle and getting to the next map. So the next map is the Gaunt Lair. So you leave this part of the sewer behind, and now you're heading directly to the Gaunt's Lair. And there's just a few encounters in the Gaunt's Lair, not too many. But here, I'm going to show you what the map is. This is still work in progress. So let me go ahead and bring this up. Because it occurs to me that I didn't actually finish this. This has the pieces in it. I just didn't put them in. So let me actually do that while I'm sitting here talking to you. So, on the right layer. Okay. So I've been doing these black vine pieces. So I'll describe what those are here in just a second. I just need another one in here. Go. All right. So there those are. All right. So this is the Gaunt's Lair, and basically, you know, the PCs can kind of come up from the sewer and they encounter the shadow door. They need to make their way through the shadow door. It damages living creatures, and then they make it into this first room. Now, this first room is where I had the rough time of the fight. So there is, in this room, there is an elite shadow viper that floats through the air and attacks you. And it nearly killed a character from each party because its poison is so tenacious. It's not super hard to save against. It's only like DC 17. But it does a D6 damage every round, and it bites for an awful lot. And in both cases, I had a character that was yo-yoing back and forth between unconsciousness as the group was pouring every ounce of healing they had into them to try and save them. So when you enter this part of the dungeon, you quickly realize that there's this black kind of root growing out of the walls all over the place, and wrapping around this altar. In the next chamber, this is where Alapar Clifton is. That would be right here. And they're wrapping around him. And if you continue further inward, you get to this doorway. The best way to describe it. Neither group has made it there yet. But through that doorway, that is where the black roots are coming from. That is also where the Gaunt is. So both groups have kind of made it to this point, but I gotta be honest, both groups had a really, really tough time with the Serpent. I think I need to tone it back. I think it is just a little too much for the party at this point. Now, the Shadow template isn't what's giving it any real power. The Shadow template's really pretty minor. It allows it to fly and gives it some enhanced senses and stuff. It doesn't really make it resistant to anything. As a matter of fact, it makes it weak against a couple of things. But the Elite template is just really good. And is making it very powerful. It makes it like a level 3 creature. 3.5. And both my groups just had a devil of a time with it. I think the big thing is they're just kind of spent on resources. I do think that has played a major part in it. Now, beyond that, there's also this area to the north up here. And that area, this whole area up here, is some weird sort of museum that the Gaunts have that's filled with relics and artifacts from their history in the city that goes back a long way, like before Wolfren. It's all penned by the same hand, which has led my players to realize that maybe Gaunts are very long-lived. Whether or not that's true or not, they're not sure, but this book is clearly 700 years old. Only one group has deciphered it, because the other group got the Comprehend Language scroll in part 1 and didn't remember it, or didn't identify it. So they have it, but they don't know that they have it, whereas the other group was like, hey, don't we have a scroll of Comprehend Language? Because this is a weird language we do not understand. Because the Gaunt language is unique. There's also all these strange relics, like there's a bit of a banner from Ilsanvenir, there's a teacup that was used to poison Alapar Clifton's father, there's, all this stuff, like a statue that was shattered in the cold of Eventide, that they have all the pieces of, and then there's this big ledger that chronicles all of their work over the centuries to stymie the Dawnbringers and anyone investigating even. And it's just like a ledger of their work. So both groups now have this, only one has deciphered it. The other group does not know what it says just yet. They'll figure it out eventually. One of these days they'll take another look at their scrolls and realize that they can actually figure out what it says. But they're not quite there yet. So, both groups made it in, both groups dealt with the Serpent, and in both cases the Serpent nearly killed a player character. Now what's interesting is that in the next room... So, there's also, I should also note, there is this altar in the middle here, and characters that can identify some of those strange glyphs on it realize that it contains an occult ritual on it, that all you have to do is prick yourself with this silver dagger that's on the top of it, and drip your blood onto it, and it will imbue you with shadow for a little while, and allow you to pass through the shadow doors without taking damage. The Gaunts do this so they can bring people in and out without the doors killing them. Is the Viper named Old Bacon Snake? No, it's not. No, it's not. That's funny, though. It should be. It certainly snuck up on them and dealt a lot of damage, so... Yeah, so there's that. Now, interestingly enough, being worded in this way also has a weird effect with the Shadow Hunter. So I don't know if anyone remembers this, but in the first part of the adventure, there's a Shadow Hunter at the end, and the Shadow Hunter is summoned by this weird glyph on the floor, and then it chases down the PCs, hunts them down in the laboratory, and ambushes them right toward the end. But it doesn't stick around to fight. The moment it gets wounded, it flees. And that nearly killed some characters too. So here's the thing: the Shadowhunter is here. It's in this dungeon. So if you let me bring back up the map here, it's kind of lurking in this area here. I don't have the go and get that. This map is oddly incomplete, whereas I know the player maps are actually go and drag him. That's where he is. That's my Shadowhunter. While I'm at it, this should also be here. Gaunt. And put. That's where that is. Okay. So, when the players do the Shadow Ritual, anyone who has had Behind the Eyes, which is the Shadowhunter ability, anyone who has done that can then, for just a brief moment, see through the Shadowhunter's eyes and see it kind of loping back and forth here, keeping an eye on Alapar. So they can get a sense that there's a fight in the, which both groups did. And when they got to that next room, right, so at the end of part 1 of Wolfren's Fate, the party is first level. They've expended most of their resources, and they get ambushed by a level 3 creature. One that doesn't stick around to fight, but is still very powerful for their level. The only saving grace is that it flees the moment it takes much of any damage. Both groups nearly got in big trouble because of that. Both groups nearly lost a character from that fight. And both groups had somebody knocked down to the point where it could use this ability where it drains like shadow into their eyes, and which allows it to see through their eyes, which is why the Gaunts know that the players are coming. In this, both groups have now fought this, right? This was at the end of our most recent session. Both groups fought this Gaunt, or the Shadowhunter in this room right here. And in both cases, they did not have nearly as hard of a time with it. It was really strange. So both groups had a pretty easy time, or pretty hard time with the Shadow Viper. But when it came to the Shadowhunter, both groups kind of rolled over on it. Now, it helps that it doesn't have all of its protections in here, because this place is kind of in part of the plane of shadow. That is what is going on here. So it doesn't have its resistances that it normally gets for only being partially real, because it's fully real here. So I think that's a big part of it. But that's okay, because the players, I think, enjoyed getting some revenge on that damn thing, because it really messed them up the first time, and this time they were able to convert it. I think one of the groups didn't actually kill it. They drove it off, and it fled back down the corridor. But the other group did manage to put it down, to actually kill it. Now, I think the group where it ran away, it only had a few hit points left, which is why it was trying to flee. They just didn't bother chasing it. Now, what'll be real interesting is Alapar Clifton is in this room right here. And he's bound to the table by these black vines, and they are pouring shadow into his eyes because they're trying to corrupt him. They want him on their side so that they can get the information out of him about who all the other Dawnbringers are in town, because they don't always know, right? It's a game of cat and mouse between the Gaunts and the Dawnbringers, and the Gaunts don't know everything, right? So they're trying to figure out who all the Dawnbringers are, and they're trying to convert Alapar Clifton to make that happen. One group knows this because they were able to read the book. The other group does not. So that's kind of where we left off. So that kind of brings you up to speed on the playtesting up to this point. Now, what'll be interesting is whether or not they push on to the end or not. Because they don't have to. In fact, that is currently entirely optional, and I'm trying to decide if that's the way I want it to be or not. Because there is part of me that wonders if I want to allow them to just take Alapar and go, right? They could just grab him and get the hell out of here instead of risking more of their risking their lives for something that is purely optional. Now, there are some ways I could make it less optional, like Alapar cannot be removed from the table. The source of these roots must be severed, which basically means they need to go and close this portal, or just cut off the roots from the portal and then they'll all wither. But I don't know whether or not I'm going to force them to do that or not. I'm currently kind of torn. There's part of me that wonders whether or not having the final showdown here with the Gaunts be the end-all be-all is really the way to go. I also want to be cognizant, though, that if the Gaunt is here and they don't get to fight it, that feels pretty anticlimactic. So, yeah. It may be the sort of thing where maybe there are multiple Gaunts in the final chamber and some flee through the doorway the moment the PCs enter and one remains to fight them. That might be the interesting way to go. That way they know there's more out there. But, you know, they still get a satisfying fight against a foe that has been vexing them for this chunk of the adventure. So maybe that's the way to go. Give them a satisfying fight, but don't make it clear that this isn't the finale. Now that I'm talking it through, this is probably the way to go. That's one of the reasons why these lectures are so valuable to me, because it does give me a chance to just kind of say things out loud and then workshop them in my own brain as I do so, which is useful to me. So, yeah, it's been fun. I think we're getting close to the end. Now, one thing that's really interesting about the end of this that I'm not sure is a problem or not. Both groups have still not yet found the location of the missing ring. They don't yet know to go to Red Thistle. Because they haven't found Wolfren's brother's book, right? Which describes him growing up in Red Thistle and living in Red Thistle. That's the key. They need to find that book, and the only way to find that book is to apprehend the gloamling that is trying to help the teetering tower, which requires a chase. So there is both of them do still have one thing left to do, and they both have that to do. Like both groups have kind of circled around. They went in a whole bunch of different directions, but in the end, they both kind of ended up in the same spot. Which, I mean, don't get me wrong, we're running the adventure, you know, simultaneously and kind of as written, so I guess it's not a surprise, but it is uncanny how close they are. Like, right now in the adventure, literally both of them are in, you know, both groups are in this room having just finished the fight with the Shadowhunter. Like, that is exactly where they are. No more, no less. They're both at the same point in the investigation and everything. So, the upside is both groups will be wrapping this up. I think both groups are going to be done with part 2 of Wolfren's Fate in the next few... either this session or the next session. That'll be it. Which means we'll be on to part 3 already. Which is good and exciting and a little terrifying, because I haven't been getting quite as much writing done on it as I would like, but we'll get there. Necessity, mother of invention, and all that. So I got a question here. Why is Alapar in this room and not the final room? Oh, okay. So there's a reason why I did that, and the reason was I didn't want rescuing Alapar to be the culmination. I wanted it to be the step to the true discovery and knowledge, right? And maybe the answer is, you know, you can free Alapar, but Alapar urges you to go put an end, right? That he's like, I can stay here, go finish them. This will never end while they live, right? You know, that's possible as well. I have two options there. I can either have Alapar be not removable from the table until the vines are taken care of, which requires you to kind of go through the tunnel and deal with the big portal. Or I can have him urge them on. The problem with the second one is it does feel more organic and less railroady, but it's also possible that the players might be like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. So that's an issue. But why isn't Alapar just in the final room then? Well, primarily because I wanted the final room to be its own thing, right? If you look at the map here, this final chamber, a little hard to read because of all the vines and stuff, has this creepy kind of portal in the back here, and the vines are spreading out from that, and that's how they've kind of burrowed through this entire complex. This is a doorway to the realm of shadow, and that is where this root and vine is coming from, and is in some way tied to the Gaunts and their power. So I wanted that to be its kind of own separate statement and not have Alapar necessarily cluttering up the space and changing the objective there. I kind of want that to just be the finale. I did think about it for a while about having Alapar in the same room, but it felt like that encounter got too cluttered. And also I wanted to make sure I had a place to do something with the Shadow Hunter. So yeah, it's been a bit of a push and pull, to be honest. I'm still kind of, frankly, still playtesting this out. So will it stay this way in the final? I don't know yet. I kind of like how it's playing out right now, but I guess we'll see. If my players seem confused by it, then maybe you're onto something. Okay. Well, so, that's been very exciting. And yeah, I do think Alapar could also direct them to the final room, even if he's not freed from the table, he could still talk to them. And maybe that's the answer. Alapar, once they get the black ichor from being poured into his face, regains some sense of lucidity and tells them that the Gaunts are behind this. That only the Gaunt can undo this magic. I got another question. Will I remove the elite or pull the Viper altogether? I don't think I'm going to do that. What I may do is just find a way to tweak the stats and make it not quite as strong of a fight. Because I do have to remind myself the PCs have already been in like 3 or 4 fights at this point in time without rest. So there's a good chance they're pretty expended and they still have more fights to go. So this fight does not need to be that important. I might just pull the elite. That might solve it. But I do worry that if I pull the elite, it's really kind of pretty easy to kill. I think it has 20-some hit points. That. So it would die pretty easy. I don't know. So I guess that there are some ways that I could make this. There's another aspect of this too. One group has 5 players, one group has 4. That will be changing though. I do have a 5th confirmed player joining the other group, but I'm waiting until I'm done with part 2 and they can join between part 2 and part 3. I think they will get added to the group by Havanok. I think Havanok will add someone to their group as a precaution to make sure that they are safe, because they don't have the group that is short a player doesn't really have a great melee character. They've got a rogue, Dan, and they've got a cleric who does some fighting, but other than that, it's a bard and a sorcerer. So, pretty sure they're making a fighter. Pretty sure. Might be a ranger. Fighter or ranger. So the adventure itself is written for 4, but most of the encounters have an adjustment in them for if you are playing with 5 or 6 people. I include them. Like, oh, add more hit points to this. Oh, add an extra rat to this fight, right? It's just a way to kind of pad out the fights a bit and make it a bit more interesting. I include those notes. Normally in an adventure we don't. We're just like, yeah, GM, figure it out. But I'm trying to provide a full service adventure experience. It's why the first adventure, which just takes you from 1st to 2nd level, is 32 pages long. Layout on it's coming along, by the way. I think I should be able to have layout done. My goal, I'll tell you what my new goal is, just because everything keeps changing. The start of this year has been a mess. From the OGL to the Kickstarter to all this stuff. We're about to hit the 1-year anniversary of me kind of resurrecting the Eventide Patreon and I definitely want to have part 1 out by then. Out and done and in all of your hands. So that is an important goal for me because, frankly, you know, everybody's been incredibly patient with me in my meandering design, but I appreciate that because this is really robust, and I do actually have some more absolutely ridiculously exciting news that might tie into all of this, but it's too green for me to talk about, other than to just there is a chance that something really awesome could happen, and we'll see. I don't know yet. There's still a lot of talk and chatting that needs to happen, but all signs right now are pretty good. And if it does occur, I'm going to be really very happy. I think it really will change the metric on everything here. So that's, I suppose I should just leave it at that. Any more and I might get myself into trouble. So I think I'm just going to leave it at that. But, ooh, it's hard for me to even express how excited I am. New opportunity that has presented itself over the past few weeks. So, yeah, Eventide this adventure is not designed for an 8-person party. That would be too much. I'm not even sure what you would do. Just double all the encounters. Just make it, yeah, you fight 2 animated ovens. You fight 2, you know, it's just a lot. Yeah, I'm pretty excited. I think there are some really great opportunities coming up here for Eventide. We do have GaryCon coming up. I'm going to see if I can't do some Eventide stuff for GaryCon. I'm not going to be at GaryCon in person, but I am chatting with them about doing some stuff for the virtual GaryCon. So we'll see how that all plays out. But yeah, that's what I got. So if anybody has any further questions, I'm happy to chat about some stuff here. We got a little bit of time. Close this out and get ready for my other stream here to start up tonight. Yeah, this we kind of hit a middle kind of doldrum on things, but I think things are picking up. I'm looking forward to getting kind of the Hope Finder thing done and over with. We're kind of in the middle of the Kickstarter right now. I've got some interviews and some stuff like that I got to do. But other than that, I'm just kind of waiting. The Hope Finder manuscript is with Tessa, and she is giving the entire Hope Finder manuscript to scrub, clean that up. All of you who have Hope Finder, which is all of my patrons here, you will all get the updated PDFs and stuff for free. You'll be treated as if you're digital subscriber or digital backers, no matter what. So, just so you know. Yeah. If you want print edition, though, that's what the crowdfunder's for. So feel free to go grab one of those if you haven't already. I figure most of you already have. Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Tiger Eyes. Yeah, no, it's been a blast, and watching it kind of rocket off. We're almost at 400% funded now, and getting real close to that first stretch goal. So that's really exciting. So yeah, I mean, if you have the PDFs, what you'll get for the Hope Finder is you'll get the revised PDFs, obviously, and then you'll also get any digital stretch goals that we have, including things like the flyer adventures and digital sticker wallpaper and, you know, shit and stuff like that. So it's the digital rewards. For a Kickstarter, I'm not doing a bunch of huge expansions for hitting stretch goals or anything. Frankly, this whole thing is being tricky and expensive enough on my end without adding, hey, write another book on top of it. If I want to write another book for Hope Finder, I'll just write it and maybe do a crowdfunder for that print run. So, anywho, I think this model, well, one thing that's really interesting, to be honest, is this model of create it, release it digitally, use the funds from that to upgrade everything, and then do a crowdfunder for print editions, is actually really working out quite well. Like, that has worked out very well for me, and will undoubtedly be the way that I look to do an Eventide print edition. I will, of course, want to find a way to make sure that backers, supporters here get whatever print editions I do. In some cases, I may throw them at you gratis, depending on how long you've been supporting and at what level. Because I realize that, you know, for some of you, it's been a good chunk of change supporting me every month. And all that's going into art and editing and stuff. I haven't made any money off of this, but I do use it to kind of make things prettier and make them better. All that stuff's expensive. Yeah, international shipping, boy, don't get me started on international shipping. I still, like, the more I dug into it, the more apprehensive I got about offering internet. Was in. It's outrageous. It's shocking how expensive it is. Ridiculous. $45 for literally anything. Like anything that isn't a letter or a postcard or something. That's crazy. I can't afford that. I wouldn't want people to pay that much for a booklet, which is why I'm going to do print on demand for these. I do consider that to be an option for Eventide, as well as doing print on demand versions of the books. I do think that would work, and you know, this first adventure is 32 pages. I don't believe they do saddle stitch anymore, which means stapled. I don't know why they call it saddle stitch. But I think they only do perfect bound, which is the kind of square edge glued into the spine. Tiger Eyes, no. The exciting news, yeah, yeah. It's all very confusing right now. You know what? I'm not even going to speculate, because that might give too much away. So I'm just going to be quiet. I'll let folks guess and dream of cool, awesome things. I'm hoping to know and be able to talk about it within a month or two. But it may take a month or two from now. I'm just super excited about it now because we had kind of a preliminary meeting to talk about some possibilities. But that was just last week, and we haven't moved anything to resolution. It's just kind of talk and possibility. All right, folks. I think that's about all I got here today. I've got the Wrath of the Righteous stream starting up here in about 15-20 minutes. So I think I'm going to let this go here in just a minute. If anybody has any last minute questions, I'm happy to answer them. Tiger Eyes, I get you. I'm impatient as well. Trust me, I'd much rather be talking about it, but I can't. But if it happens, it is a game changer. It changes everything. It really does. It's pretty awesome. So who knows? I feel pretty confident that it is going to happen at this point, but I've learned not to count my my chickens before they hatch. All right. That's what I got here tonight, folks. I want to thank you all for watching. I want to thank you for your continued support. It means the world to me. It's why this is even happening. It's why I am lined up for a possible super cool opportunity. And it's all thanks to you. So thank you very much, everybody. I will see you again next week. I may try and do a Lord stream this Saturday. I haven't done one in a while. And I may try and do one of those... maybe talking about an art order. I may try and put together the next art order and walk folks through how art orders together. Maybe I'll do that with Lord this Saturday. I'll think about it. All right, folks. That's all I have this week. We'll see you next week. For those of you sticking around for the Twitch stream, we'll see you over there in about 15. Thank you for watching, everybody. Thank you for your continued support, and we will see you next time.